This is a political story with the involvement of Trump and the extraordinary lining up of the defenders of the BBC, like Emily Maitlis and Lewis Goodall and all the rest of these people, and particularly that very curious figure, Alastair Campbell. What did you make of Alastair Campbell's role in this doughty defence of the BBC against this wicked internal threat, that of all the hundreds and thousands of people employed by the BBC, they were able to identify a Tory? There was a Tory there. There was Robbie Gibbs. There he was at the heart of it. This monstrous, this clearly a kind of decayed cell in this otherwise pure body. A Tory was found in the BBC. Now, what did you make of Campbell's role? Do you think it's honest? Do you think that he... No, let me finish, please. You mustn't anticipate what I'm going to say about Alastair Campbell. Do you think that it's in good faith? What do you think is the performance of the Maitlises, the Goodalls, the Campbells, the Stewarts? What are they doing? Are they genuinely saying that they seem to be doing, as indeed Private Eye, as I always say, Private Eye has now become the equivalent of Bertolt Brecht in East Germany. It is the permitted satire within the regime. Private Eye, again mounting the defence, exactly the same defence, that this attack on the BBC is a wicked, motivated Tory attack that owes its origins to the wicked intervention of Boris Johnson, who is the origin of all of this sort of thing. What do you make of that kind of?
I think it's we can only guess as to what each individual is thinking, but my own my philosophy on this is that most people mean well and believe in what they say. I think Hanlon's razor never attribute to malice what could be explained by stupidity or whatever. I think that's the case. Yeah, I think, jokes aside, it isn't uncharitable. I wish the word weren't stupidity. I wish it were perhaps ignorance or cultishness. And I used to look into cults. That's what I was doing as a YouTuber before I got involved in this whole mess. And it's remarkably similar. You talk to a Scientologist and you tell them, hey, evil galactic warlord Xenu doesn't really exist. They will say you're a suppressive person. So these are thought-terminating cliches, which means you don't really have to think too much. You just say the word. So transphobe would be one of them, for example. Or Tory, if you're at the BBC, Tory is one of them. Nobody has to think so much anymore. When you've been involved in a corporation like the BBC, as we discussed before, that is captured by groupthink, then someone like Alastair Campbell, of course, is just going to think whatever everybody else in his group thinks. Whereas the rest of us have been outside of it, and we're able to look in from the outside and go, bloody hell, that Scientology or that BBC has really gone quite far. So I think that those guys, Alastair Campbell, Emily Maitlis, especially when you watch the anger with which Emily Maitlis says the things she says when she accuses Rupert Lowe of racism. I heard somebody refer to it, I can't think who it was, as she looks like she's chewing a wasp. Which I think accurately portrays her face in those moments.
She looks like Medea. She looks like a figure from a Greek drama. I mean, she's a very handsome, in some ways, very handsome woman, but you could see her on stage performing ritual sacrifice. There is a sense, isn't there? There's a genuine sense of an incandescent rage, which no rational person would normally display in the face of ordinary human behaviour. But of course, she will see the kind of things that Rupert Lowe says, or indeed the kind of politics of Gibbs or whatever, as some absolute monstrous aberration. Hence the drama. But you see, I think you're being far too kind. Can I remind you, everybody seems to have forgotten, everybody's talked about the resignation of the Director General and the head of news as this unique crisis in the BBC. Andrew, memories are very, very short. 21 years ago, not only did the Director General resign, at the same time, so did the chairman of the BBC, who was called Gavin Davis, and the Director General was Greg Dyke. They resigned over the dodgy dossier and the claims that the famous dodgy dossier to justify the invasion of Iraq had been sexed up. Can we just investigate who those two people were? They were both major Labour figures. The Blair government put a major Labour donor, that is to say, Gavin Davis, in charge of the BBC as its chairman. No apologies. It's simply not, this is not, Robbie Gibbs put into some obscure role on the governing body. You actually put in a major Labour donor as the chairman of the BBC. And not only do you put in a major Labour donor, that person then proceeds to appoint another major Labour supporter in the media, Greg Dyke, as the Director General of the BBC. And then what does the Labour Party after it's, my grammar is becoming as bad as this, what does the Labour Party do after it's done that? Because the BBC dares to ask questions about the Iraq War, about the dodgy dossier, it dismisses both of them. And who is the person who led the attack on the BBC? It is a certain Alastair Campbell, who organised the whole sordid coup and justified it. And here we're talking about lawyers. I've got to be very careful of my language. Justified it by the very careful choice of the judge, Lord Hutton, to mount the inquiry. Somebody who was an obscure Northern Irish judge, used to sitting on Diplock courts, which, knew they had to find the right verdict. Shall we just put it like that? So Alastair Campbell, this man who is defending the BBC against political interference, mounted the most outrageous pair of events of political interference. One, that you appoint the entire managerial team, the chairman and the director general, who control the whole apparatus, are effectively government appointees of your own party. And when they don't perform, you unceremoniously force both of them to resign. So what are these people doing? Complaining. The degree of hypocrisy, of short memories, is simply outrageous. And I'd like to say something else. We need also to go back to that time to see so much of what's gone wrong. I don't know whether you noticed, it's more your world than mine. Very recently, the former Vice President of America, Dick Cheney, died. Did you ever see that extraordinary film? I know you're interested in this stuff. Did you ever see that extraordinary film called Vice on Dick Cheney?
Yeah, was it Christian Bale?
That's right, who put on huge amounts of weight, completely transformed himself. It was a very weird film because it was all about the fact that Cheney had been given somebody's heart, and you saw this heart being extracted from some sort of road accident victim, and it was constantly pumping up and down. But it was the sense of the sheer extraordinary amorality of this man. And a lot of work's been done on Cheney. Cheney is the man more than anybody else, apart from Alastair Campbell, who is responsible for this post-truth world that we operate in now. He set himself deliberately to shape policy by lies. And it seems to me Campbell's role in Britain under Tony Blair was exactly that. You normalise the telling of lies. And this is what I think is, we need to understand and put all of this into the context of what we're seeing at the moment with this Labour government, with somebody like Starmer. The first instinct of everybody faced with a problem is simply to lie. Repeatedly to lie. So that whole central message of the BBC, speak peace, nation unto nation, truth and all the rest of it, has been undercut from the people who profess to be its profoundest supporters. And it's part of the extraordinary hypocrisy of our public life. It's, I think, a fundamental reason why so many people are opting out of the licence fee, why the level of trust in the BBC has declined in the way that it has. People fundamentally know that so much of what is there is actually a sustained lie.